Imagine being in a prison cell. And being in a prison cell unjustly. You're there because you're standing up for what's good and right when the world around you seems to be going crazy, mad. Perhaps that might give you a taste of what it must have been like in 1943 when Dietrich Bonhoeffer looked outside of his prison cell around Christmas time. He was there because he was a part of the conspiracy against Hitler. He was there because as a part of that conspiracy, he was going to be arrested. They were going to try to find out everything they could from him, and his life was on the line. It's not a hopeful time. He's separated at Christmas in a prison cell in Nazi Germany, separated from his fiancée, separated from his family, separated from everything that he knows. And there's only one way out if someone from the outside gives him freedom. He, in that hopeless situation, struck up a letter to a friend. Here's what he wrote. A prison cell in which one waits, hopes, and is completely dependent upon the fact that the door of freedom has to be opened from the outside is not a bad picture of Advent. We have to wait for something from the outside to set us free. That's what hope looks like. We're in the season of Advent, which is not just a little gearing up for the big time of Christmas 4 weeks from now, but it's a time for Christians of anticipation about who Jesus is and what He's about, and how He brought ultimate deliverance for us from the outside when we were in a spiritual version of a prison cell, just like that. And we needed that deliverance because we couldn't deliver ourselves. There was no way out, no way of freedom for us. And so for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about hope and love and joy and peace. Things that we were created to desire and have need for, but we were also incapable of producing really on our own. And we needed to be rescued. We needed to be delivered from the outside. And it came to us, and it still comes to us oftentimes when we least expect it. Have you ever been in a hopeless situation? Have you ever felt absolutely hopeless? I remember several Christmases ago, many of you know it took over 12 years for us to sell our house in Indiana. And I remember several Christmases ago when we were trying to rent that, and we hadn't gotten any rent for several months, 3 or 4 months at that point. And wrestling back and forth with that tenant in Indiana and carrying all that. We had almost nothing left in our bank account. And I remember just thinking, this is a hopeless situation. What are we ever going to do to get out of this mess? Some of you have been in a financially hopeless situation. Maybe it's like that. Maybe you unexpectedly lost a job. Maybe some incredible bill came your way. And I don't even know where to begin, you're thinking. Some of you have a different kind of hopeless situation. You didn't feel right. You went to the doctor and you had the tests, and then you got that diagnosis that you never wanted to hear that word attached to you. And now it is. And it feels hopeless. Or perhaps you're like someone who you found that Mr. Right or that Mrs. Right, and you were excited. You thought you'd be together forever. You stood in a church. You pledged your life to one another. These vows were serious to you. And then for whatever reason, it fell apart. You didn't see that coming. And you don't know what to do. And it feels hopeless in this mess. Or maybe you've lost somebody who you love. Husband, a wife, a child, a parent, a friend. And that loss is so huge in your life, and it's like, I don't even know what to do about tomorrow. It's a hopeless time. Or maybe you had a good friendship, a good relationship, and then there was that conflict, that argument that happened, and all of a sudden, what was really right has just fallen apart. And it just seems hopeless that will ever come back together. Or maybe none of that really connects with you because you've never been married, or maybe you've never even had a really serious relationship, or other people seem to have a lot of friends and you don't really have any, and you long for that, and you're desperately lonely, and that too has a measure of hopelessness attached to it. Or maybe you said, I'm never going to do that, and then you did it. Or you said, I'm never going to say that, and then you said it. I'm never going to go there, and then you went there. Or maybe you said, okay, I made a mistake, I did it once, I'm never going to do that again. And then you did it again, and again, and again. Multiple times over. And you're so full of guilt over that. Oh, I would do anything to have taken that, but I wish, and I don't know what to do now, and it just keeps falling into it, and so on and so forth, and you feel so ashamed, it's all over. And that too feels hopeless. A Swiss theologian named Emil Brunner said this: what oxygen is to the lungs, such is hope to the meaning of life. There's a lot of truth to that. We're desperate people needing hope, but we can't create this on our own. It's not something we do. It comes to us from the outside. Now, our world says it differently. If you asked probably the average guy on the street, I bet you'd get some kind of conceptual answer like that when it came to hope. The world says that hope's a desire for some good in the future and the wish that it might come true. I really want X to happen, and I hope it works out, right? And while they maybe haven't thought through all the implications of that, that means that hope is completely based on them working really hard, luck, a lot of good luck, the circumstances just falling in line, and if it doesn't, well, then the hope was dashed. Now, Christian hope or scriptural hope is very different from that. Here's what it is. It's the desire for God's goodness and will for my future and the expectation that He'll fulfill it. Now, notice right there whose goodness and will it is. It's God's goodness and will. It's not my desire. It's not my agenda. It's not having my dreams come true. It's God's goodness and will for my future, and then the expectation that He will fulfill it. So it's His doing. It's based in not my good works. It's not based in my intellect. It's not based in my discipline. It's based in the character of God, who's faithful and true and good and right. It's based in His promises. It's based in His eternal promises. It's not something circumstantial. But how can you trust in that when your circumstances feel so hopeless? Well, friends, hope believes yes when our circumstances say no. That's the main deal we're dealing with today. Hope believes yes when our circumstances say no. And had I been smarter and thought about this a few days ago, I'd add a little carrot in there, okay? Hope believes in Jesus yes when our circumstances say no. It's not just my yes. Oh, I'm just gonna keep trusting. I'm gonna keep hoping. I'm gonna keep, maybe it'll work out. No. It's about Jesus' divine yes in my life, even when my circumstances say no. The people of Israel, who we're going to read about today and in these next 3-4 weeks, were in a pretty hopeless situation. We're going to look at the prophet Isaiah in chapter 42. And if you've got your Bible, you can turn there. If not, that blue Bible in front of you or below you, grab it and turn to page 717, 717. But while you're doing it, let me set the scene. They're in a hopeless situation. When Isaiah writes this, they have been conquered and occupied by a foreign power. At first, it was the Assyrians. By the time Isaiah is writing, it's the Babylonians. Soon it will be the Persians, and then the Greeks, and then the Romans. They are under the thumb of an oppressive enemy who has no regard for them, who wants nothing really good for them. They just want them to pay their taxes, fall in line, and do what they're told, right? Be slaves, essentially, of them. That's pretty hopeless. They're there because they rebelled against God, ultimately, and went against His will and way, and this was the consequence after generations of doing that. But still, it's pretty hopeless when you're under somebody's boot and at the tip of their sword. And this didn't just happen in a minute. When Isaiah's writing this, already the parents of the audience that are reading this have been under the occupation of the enemy in a hopeless situation, probably their grandparents and maybe many more generations before. And the people who read this for the first time, their kids will be in the same spot they're in. And their grandkids will, and many generations after. You see, when Isaiah writes this, it's sort of the beginning of what's going to be 800 years long suffering. 800 years long in what seems to be a very hopeless situation. That's a long time. Now, they cried out to God for deliverance for generations. They knew that they could not deliver themselves. They couldn't raise up some army and go lick the oppressor. They couldn't have some little, resistant cell that would someday throw them off. That wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to be delivered on their own. They needed to be delivered by God from the outside. Some supernatural deliverance. They cried out to Him for generations for that. And God promised that He would deliver them. From the outside, from heaven, in a supernatural and dramatic way, He was going to bring deliverance to them. But it was a long time to wait. They waited for God to act, but their circumstances didn't change for generations, for 800 years. That's a long time. They had to trust in these words of hope, God's yes, even when their circumstances didn't change and they continued to essentially say no. Here's what Isaiah says in chapter 42, beginning in verse 1. Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. He will not shout or cry out or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. He will not falter or be discouraged till he establishes justice on the earth. In his law, the islands or the nations will put their hope. So who is this servant he's talking about? This prophet Isaiah, seeing his people under the thumb of this foreign invasion, under this occupation in a hopeless situation. Who's he talking about? Who's this servant? Well, he's going to be somebody that comes from God. That he will belong to God. God will delight in him. He will uphold him. And he will pour out his Spirit upon him. So this is a divine action that's happening. Something supernatural. This guy's going to be righteous. Have you ever seen somebody treated unfairly? Have you ever seen somebody get special deals when everybody else doesn't? That may be the way the world works. That's not how this guy's going to work. He's going to be very different. He will be just, and he will restore justice. And he will be merciful and good. Have you ever seen a bruised reed or a smoldering wick? That's the best picture of a smoldering wick I could find, but really, it's when the candle is absolutely almost gone. There's just a teensy bit left. And a bruised reed, you see, it's hung over, it could easily be broken off. That's what the people are like when Isaiah's writing. They're like a bruised reed. They're very damaged. They're a smoldering wick. Just a little bit hanging on. It's almost all over. It's almost no hope left. It's almost gone completely. That's how they are. And in their world, what would a ruler who comes be like? Just smash them under his boot. Just get him with the tip of his sword. Somebody strong, going to make them submit. That's not how this guy's going to be. He's going to be gentle. He's going to be peaceful. And he's going to be faithful. You've probably trusted in somebody you thought you could count on until you couldn't. And so you're probably sort of conditioned to think, well, you can never fully count on someone. I mean, you can hope it'll work out, but you're never sure, right? Well, not with this guy. He's going to stick it out until the mission is accomplished. He's going to do something supernatural. Here's what his mission is. Look at verse 5. This is what God the Lord says. He who created the heavens and stretched them out, he who spread on the earth and all that comes out of it, who gives breath to its people and life to those who walk on it. I, the Lord, have called you in righteousness. I will take hold of your hand. I will keep you and will make you to be a covenant for the people and a light for the Gentiles, to open the eyes that are blind and free the captives from prison, and to release from the dungeon those who sit in darkness. This is 3,000-year-old poetry that did not come true for 800 years. Now, don't miss this. What's this guy's mission? He's going to bring a new covenant to them. What is a covenant? We think in terms of contracts, okay? If I make a contract with you, that's really based on mutual distrust. We're signing a paper that says, you're going to do your part, and I'm going to do my part. But if you don't do your part, I don't have to do my part. And at any point, this thing can be dissolved. I'm only obligated to do my part, but only if you do your part. That's what a contract is, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a covenant, which is an entirely new arrangement, okay? In a contract, we're two different parties and we stay two different parties, but not in a covenant. In a covenant, they're two different parties become one. They're bound together as one. I am yours and you are mine. It's based not on your performance, and it's not even really based on my performance completely. It's an arrangement that's brought together by a promise and an oath. It's sealed in blood, and it cannot be dissolved. Here's what he's saying. God's going to create a new covenant, a new arrangement that's going to bind you with Him together forever. It changes everything about your relationship. That is very good news to a hopeless people. Not only that, He's going to be a new light to the world. Okay? Now, people were blind to the things of God, as Isaiah is writing. They're prisoners, in a sense, consumed with sin in a spiritual dungeon. They're in darkness. They need to be transformed. Now they're going to be able to see God. And not only that, they're going to be delivered from their sin, and they're going to be able to walk in God's light. They're going to know Him. That's great news! But they had to wait for 800 years to see it fulfilled. That's a long time to believe in the promise of a yes when your circumstances continue to say no. For generation after generation. Let's be honest. We don't wait 800 seconds before we give up. Right? I tried it, I'm done. 800 seconds. And we just give up they waited 800 years. That means that when we're talking about trusting in the hope, means trusting in the yes, God's yes, Jesus' yes, when your circumstances say no, you're going to trust in that, and it's not going to be on your timing. It's not going to be based on your expectations. It's not going to be a 2 + 2 = 4 thing. It's not going to be a flip the light switch and it's all okay now. It's going to be trusting that God's yes is really yes, even though your circumstances may not always bear that out. Jesus is the servant that Isaiah was talking about. And they had to wait 800 years for Him to come on the scene. But when He did, He was the beloved Son of God who was filled with the Holy Spirit. He was the righteous one who was just and the justifier of sin. And not only that, He was the imperfect embodiment of mercy. He was faithful unto death, even death on a cross. But they had to believe in Jesus, yes. They had to hope in Jesus, yes, even though their circumstances continued to say no. Now, when Matthew was writing the gospel that he wrote, Gospel of Matthew, and he was looking at Jesus' life, and he was seeing all that Jesus did. He was seeing the people that He healed. He was seeing the teachings that He'd done, the miracles that He performed. He saw what God was doing in and around Him, and he said, bang, that's Isaiah 42. He immediately drew himself to that. Flip, if you will, to Matthew chapter 12. And it's on page 967 in that blue Bible. He saw Isaiah 42 screaming out of what he's seeing. Here's what was going on. Jesus has been teaching. He's been performing miracles. Religious leaders want to kill Him. We know that from verse 14. But let's start at verse 15. Aware of this, in other words, Jesus is aware that people are out to kill Him. Jesus withdrew from that place. Many followed Him. And He healed all their sick, warning them not to tell who He was. This was to fulfill what was spoken through Isaiah the prophet. Here is my servant whom I've chosen, the one I love and whom I delight. I will put my Spirit on him, and he will proclaim justice to the nations. He will not quarrel or cry out. No one will hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out, till he leads justice to victory. In his name, the nations will put their hope. Wow. Jesus is welcoming strangers and outcasts. He's healing their sick. He's forgiving the sinner who comes to him. And Jesus didn't just announce a new covenant. He was the new covenant. He was the new covenant. By his own shed blood for us on the cross, he paid once and for all the debt we had in sin. He took that penalty once and for all. And if we would put our faith in him, we have the hope of forgiveness of sin and everlasting life with God. Peace with him forever. Because Jesus not just announces the new covenant, he is the new covenant. And he didn't just point the way to the light. Oh, it is over there. He was the light of the world. He was the light of the world. If you follow him, you will see God for who he really is, and you will see the world as God sees it. You will walk in the light of his righteousness and his holiness as a gift from God forever. So don't put your hope in yourself, because you can't live up to your expectations. I don't care how good you are. You can't do it. You can't. And don't put your hope into somebody else. I don't care how wonderful that husband, that wife, that child, that parent is, or that friend, or whoever, that political leader. Don't care. Don't put your hope in somebody else, because they won't fill your expectations either. Don't put your hope in circumstances. Your circumstances will one day go against you. Even if they're going great now, and they always have been, well, then they won't, because you can't control your circumstances. So what are you putting your hope in? Place your hope in Jesus, and he will actually transform everything for eternity in your life. He's the only one whose yes you can trust and count on forever. I want to just give you 3 examples of what that might look like. Here's the first one. If you put your hope in Jesus, it will mean victory over sin. It'll mean victory over sin. Now, it means that the person you once were before Christ will not be the person you are in time after him. You won't be that same guy anymore. You won't keep going down those same roads. That won't be who you are. Let me give you a picture of something really strange. That is a 2-headed copperhead snake. It was found in a home, a front yard in Virginia not long ago. As you can imagine, that's something you don't see every day. That 2-headed copperhead snake has 1 heart and 1 set of lungs, but it has 2 brains, 1 in each head. Right? As you can imagine, there's a bit of a conflict going on. Right? When the right head wants to drink, it will ultimately sometimes drown the left head in the process of getting water, and vice versa. When both heads want to eat, that makes them extra vulnerable. Anatomically, the right head seems to be better arranged to protect the snake for life, but the left head actually seems to be the dominant one. As you can imagine, the snake has problems. It's in big trouble. It's pulling itself constantly in different directions. Have you ever felt like that? Do you ever feel like you're being pulled in different directions? Like you got one brain that wants to honor God and wants to live a life for him, and you seem to have one brain that pulls yourself to the other place. The Bible uses a word for sin as something that goes against God's will and way. It means missing the mark, literally, of his holy standard. It's really every bad thing you've ever said, thought, or done. It's every good thing that you failed to say, think, or do. It's even the good things you did, but you did them for all the wrong reasons. Have you ever found yourself being pulled in that direction when you want to go in this one? Over and over again, you seem to be missing the mark. You're desperate to want to honor God, but circumstances keep pulling you in the other direction over and over. And your circumstances, you know what they tell you? They keep saying no. That's the way it will always be. You may want this, but you're always going to go over here. You may want to please God, but you're always going to disobey him. You may want to honor him, but that's never going to work out. It may work out for the other guy, but it's not going to work out for you. And he keeps pulling you over, pulling you over, pulling you over. It's hard to trust Jesus, yes, right? Because your no seems to be winning all the time. Here's what Paul said about it in Romans 8. Therefore, there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Why? If you're in Christ, this is the best news for you. Because through Christ Jesus, the law of the Spirit who gives life has set you free from the law of sin and death. If you are in Christ and you've trusted in the hope, yes, of Jesus, you know what that means? You may have a piece of you that's pulling you this way, but this will not be the ultimate victory of your life. You can change. You don't have to go that way anymore. You can trust in Jesus, yes. It's going to require you surrendering to Him in every way. You're not going to do it on your own. It's going to come from the outside and His delivering power when you submit your will and you obey Him. Now, listen, hope in His yes. Trust in His yes. Stay true to Him. Go in His direction. When you fail, own up to it. Repent of it. And go back in His direction. Keep pursuing Him every day. Do not stop. And if you do not stop, you will change. You will have victory in your life. That's your hope. That's one place. Here's another. It means that relationships can be healed too. That's the second place I thought about hope that's so real. Hope means in Jesus that your relationships can absolutely be healed. Perhaps you got captured, as I did, by this story of Botham Jean and Amber Geiger. Do you know that story? She was a police officer in Dallas, and she went into Botham Jean's brother's apartment, somehow thinking it was her own, and in the confusion of that event, she shot and killed his brother. And the trial was ended. She was convicted. She's going to prison. And in the sentencing phase, in what never happens in a courtroom, Botham Jean was testifying and said that he wanted her to know that as a Christian, he'd forgiven her. You can see this on YouTube. It's incredible. And then he asked the judge, could he get up and hug her? That never happens where the victim's family is hugging the defendant who just got convicted for killing their... How does that happen? It wasn't because he read a book. It wasn't because he was smarter than the rest of us or he was more nice than the rest of us. It wasn't because he was a wet noodle and just forgot what happened and he didn't care about his brother. No. Something supernatural happened in his life. And he was filled with a supernatural power from Jesus. And as a result of that, he could forgive the very woman who did that. The circumstances of your relationships, right? They may be saying no right now. They may be screaming no. That's never going to work out. We haven't talked to each other for years. It's never going to change. That won't happen. I'm not asking you to deny reality. And I know you can't control the other person, but guess who you can control? You. You can control that. And the same supernatural power that was in Botham Jean is in you if you're in Christ. He didn't get it and you got left out. The same supernatural power that's in him is in you. And you know what that means? That means you can be a force for love instead of hate. You can. That means you can be a force of humility instead of pride. You can. That means you can be a person of forgiveness instead of bitterness. You can do that. Remember, Jesus forgave and transformed you when you were at your worst. And He can change any heart, including yours, including the one who you think will always be the no. Hope in His yes. Here's the third one. Hoping in Jesus means that even our bad choices can be redeemed. Even our bad choices can be redeemed. Now, the choices that you've made may be making your circumstances a pretty clear and loud no right now. I get it. Some of us have made some really bad choices in our life, and we're stuck with those consequences. We, for example, blew off school, and now we don't know where we're going to go, what we're going to do. We managed to get fired by being stupid at work, by doing things that we shouldn't do. We did it, and now we're stuck in a dead-end job that we hate, and we don't see any way out of it. Or maybe we were horrible with money, and now we're broke. We made ourselves broke. We spent more than we should. We took out the credit cards. All of those things happen, right? We partied really hard, and now our health is really suffering, right? We did that. Nobody made us do that. We in our marriage, we made the mistake of wandering away. We made the mistake of letting the toxic nature come in. All of those things, we the ones that helped to blow that up. We had a role to play in that. Or we didn't do well as parents because we alienated our kids. We didn't make time for them. We didn't lead them well. And now they're off doing things that we don't approve of. We don't even talk to them, right? Or maybe the other way is around. Maybe as kids, we wandered from our parents. We did everything against what they said and taught us. And now we're stuck in that place. What are we going to do? Our bad choices got us there. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Your circumstances are not going to change in an instant. They're not going to change because you have some nice little happy talk one Sunday morning. That's not how it works. You didn't get into those circumstances overnight. You're not going to get out of them overnight. But they don't have to be your choice and your state forever. The place that you're in, the know of your circumstances, don't have to define the rest of your life. There's hope in Jesus even for that. Let me give you one example. My friend Jim has two parents. Their names are Jim and Adele. When they were 17 and 18 years old, they had 3 children. By the time they were 17 and 18 years old, they both were high school dropouts. Adele's parents were alcoholics, both. Jim's parents, one of his parents were alcoholics. They were divorced. Everything in their family tree was one series of dysfunction after another, right? School dropouts, dead-end jobs, bad marriages, all that substance abuse, all of those kinds of things over and over and again. They didn't have any good examples. Here they are, unmarried, 3 kids, 17 and 18, but they make a fundamental decision. They're going to break the chain of what they came from and all of those kinds of things, right? So he gets a job as a truck driver, and he works like crazy, as much as he can, does extra jobs if he can, all those kinds of things to get ahead. They decided since alcohol was bad in their family's history, there wasn't going to be a drop in their home. Nothing addictive was ever going to be in their house. That's not who they were going to be. They weren't going to be those kinds of people because it ruined so many folks in their family. They couldn't go back and redo school and redo education on their own, but they were going to make sure that their kids knew what education was. So they poured their life into their kids so that they would value school. Anytime their kids had any kind of academic interest at all, they put gasoline on that fire, right? I mean, they really valued that so much. So much so that my friend Jim, do you know when he was 14, he knew math and stuff better than them. He was doing the bills for the family at 14, right? Because they wanted to show that interest in him. Their kids, they didn't go to church, Jim and Adele. Their kids eventually got invited to Washington Street Church of God in Indianapolis. And after a while, all 3 of their kids became Christians. And Jim and Adele are watching this change that are happening in their kids' life. What's going on here? We better check this church out, see what's going on. And so they showed up one day. And after a time, they too became followers of Jesus Christ. And now, their kids go up through school. One goes to college, does well. The other 2, they don't, but they get really good, solid jobs as a result. Their grandkids value education. Their grandkids are going to college, but even more importantly than that, all 3 of their kids know Jesus, and their grandkids know Jesus. And all of this stuff is changing. Their whole family tree is transformed. Not long ago, Jim and Adele celebrated 55 years of marriage. 55 years. Their son Jim, who's my friend, was a banker, and then he was a pastor, and now he's the president of our national church's retirement board. Those, Jim and Adele, you know what they are? They're legacy makers. They're chain breakers. They've transformed everything by the supernatural power of Jesus. The bad choices they made didn't have to define the rest of their life. Didn't have to. Now I want you to think about your choices. Every bad choice that you've made that's put you in the circumstances that you're in, that doesn't have to define the rest of your life. They can be redeemed in Jesus too. But you have to hope in His yes. I didn't say they'll be changed tomorrow. I didn't say they'll be changed next week, next month, or even next year. You may not fully see the fruit in your lifetime. Remember, they had to wait 800 years. It may be a generational thing for you. I don't know. But I do know that Jesus' eternal yes can redeem every one of those situations. Every single one without exception, and He will. The question is, will you keep believing the no of your circumstances, or will you take the risk to trust in the yes of Jesus' promise? Poet Richard Gibbs said this, "Are you bruised? Be of good comfort. He calls you. Conceal not your wounds. Open all to Him and go to Christ. There is more mercy in Him than sin in you." That is the truth of the gospel of Jesus. Your sin, you can gain victory over it. Your relationships can be healed, and your choices can be redeemed, and there's so much more. But will you hope in the yes of Jesus rather than the no of your circumstances? We're going to close by singing a song today. We want to invite you to feel free to come forward. Maybe you want to pray at one of these altars. Maybe you want to pray with a prayer partner. Maybe you want to pray by yourself. Whatever you do, stop listening to the no of your circumstances. Start looking and listening to the yes of Jesus' eternal promise. Stand with me, let's pray. Lord Jesus, we put everything in your hands. We love you. We thank you for what you did. We thank you that you came for us. We thank you that you were God's divine answer to our heart's cry that we needed hope from the outside, and you've opened the door to the cell. Lord, leave us the courage to walk out and trust in your yes, even though it may not seem that way, at least not at first. Help us to take those steps. We confess before you our sin. We confess before you the brokenness of our lives and our relationships, and we confess before you the bad choices we've made. We need to be redeemed from all of that, God. Would you begin to work in our lives by the power of your Holy Spirit? We trust in you. In Jesus' name, amen. As we sing, if you'd like to pray with someone or by yourself, would you come?